Hey there, this little discussion video today is about how you get here. On the tables, some pretty definitive and pretty inarguably high quality pieces of gear of various kinds. Everything from very high quality everyday carry pocket knives to high quality hard use large pocket knives, high quality multi-tools, high quality bushcraft knives, reasonably high quality British shorthair cats, and high quality pocket flashlights. But the video is not about these items, the videos are about how I got to these items, and I'd like to hear from you, so it's a bit of an open question. How did you get to your items? Because most people don't start buying these things, like these high caliber items. Most people's gear journey, to use a pretty cheesy adjective, is generally commenced with a few pretty embarrassing purchases, and then a bit more research begins to happen from those embarrassing purchases, and then you warm your way up. You don't want to spend all your money on things you're not sure about, so you buy a few reasonable price things, and eventually you end up being comfortable enough with your information, your research, your brands, that sort of thing, to be able to drop the big money on the high ticket, high quality items. So without further ado, let's learn about how I got to these things from some pretty embarrassing things. Yep, pretty embarrassing things. Taught me a few lessons. Pretty much focusing on the things in the middle. So I guess a good way to sum this video up is, what was your first good blank flashlight, folding pocket knife, multi-tool, fixed blade knife? Your first good gear that you got after, getting the confidence up and getting the research done, rather than just blindly buying things willy-nilly. But let's start from the beginning. It all started for me by getting given a book from my mother called Blood, Sweat and Tears, which is the story of Bear Grylls and his life and all that sort of thing. Cider open. Bear Grylls it was a good book, and he's had a colourful life. I've become somewhat interested in the fella, and I started watching his shows. And this is a point where I am not the person I am today. I'm still living in the country, but I'm certainly not gear centric at all. I think I had a couple of very basic pocket knives just that I picked up as sort of curios, not interested at all. But I watched a few episodes of Man vs. Wild. Probably being a man, I've always been interested in knives and weaponsy sort of thing. I don't know, this philosophy's changed a lot, but anyway, I was somewhat interested, but then I got quite interested in what Bear Grylls would talk about as a survival knife. So what did I do? I started looking for a survival knife. I thought, that might be a cool thing to just play with, that they look like they're fun to hold. So what do I find? I find that Bear Grylls has brought out a survival series of knives. So I've got this Bear Grylls Ultimate fixed blade knife. This is the first iteration, the very first one that came out in 2009 or 2010. And to complement that, I thought, well, a pocket knife might be cool. So I got this. I'd had pocket knives in the past, like little case knives and Swiss Army knives, when I was a child, of course. Long since forgotten the whole thing. But I thought, you know what, I want something with a pocket clip, that looks handy. So sure enough, and this was at the point where in Australia you couldn't really get pocket clip or one-hand opening knives, except for, it seems, for real mass-produced stuff. So I got myself this Bear Grylls Compact Scout. This is hilarious. The cat stuck his claws into the dressing gown, and yep. This is a British shorthair cat, by the way. Come here, Basil. Oh. There he is. Very good cat. Very high quality. That's your Basil. Yeah. Very good boy. He's like the dog of the cat world. Just loves us to bits. Anyway, so I come home with this. Well, I sent away for this, and this popped in the post, and I pretty quickly learned. For a while, it actually kind of put me off carrying a pocket knife, because it's too wide. It's the lock back's really far back, so it's really hard to engage. The action just feels cheap. The handle's really squishy, like you can squish it. Very seamy. You can see like the seams popped open at the back there. So it's a junky knife, and it is. So that kind of put me back a bit. The steel would never stay sharp. The serrations got worn all the way down really quickly, just from cutting a few things. I did have that phenomenon that now that I carried a knife, I actually found myself using it, but this just wasn't fun to use. So I shelved that idea. I did somewhat enjoy carrying this for a little while. This is still a substantial feeling knife with a very comfy grip. It's made of 7CR steel. Actually didn't bother me too much, but then you start to see the videos of them failing. The item sort of became a little bit of a joke, and I know I should make up my own minds, but you know what, I started looking for something that, and I did always think it was ugly, but I started looking for something that I wasn't particularly, as visually deterred by, and I started branching out into what other good knives, and of course, what do I search for? What's a good, fairly cheap survival knife, or fixed blade knife? So what did I come up with? Yep, I started on the Moros. Moro knives. These are what, although they look crazily different to this thing, they're actually about the same capability. They really are. The blade's about the same length, and by about I mean, it's a couple of millimeters, or maybe a centimeter or something shorter. But you can really do about the same with this. But as soon as you hold this, you sort of feel it's lighter. It hasn't got that unnecessary heaviness. Super sharp and stayed super sharp. Scanty grinds with great beginner grinds. So then I went on to these Moro knives. I collected a few of them up. These are just two examples. I've got the fire knife as well, and I've got the bushcraft black too. But this is the Moro Classic 612 and the Moro Companion. Both steel, scary sharp. It's carbon steel, stainless steel. Great to learn a bit about the qualities of steel. This is sort of where my journey into getting proper good gear began. Then I went back into wanting pocket knives again. So what did I get? I tried a few little bits and bobs, and then I settled on, again, what's a good, cheap folding pocket knife? The bomb-proof Leatherman Crater C33. I'd had Leatherman multi-tools by that point. Not my first one. My first multi-tool, good multi-tool, wasn't a Leatherman at all, but Leatherman had my brand confidence. I'd started doing a bit of research on steel. I wanted something that was easy to sharpen. So I got this 420HC Leatherman Crater C33. And this knife has a lot of use on it, and it really is. I still recommend this to people who don't want to spend much but get a good little everyday carry pocket knife. Nice short stout blade, high level of control, just an ugly pocket clip's pretty much the only thing I'll knock it for, but very, very much an accessible little, very basic little knife, really smooth little action there I've tightened it up a bit myself, but bronze phosphor washer, you can actually flick it open. Great place to start. Folding pocket knife started there. Multi-tools. Well, I got back in touch with, because I had a couple of those horrible Kookaburra or Coleman sort of folding multi-tools or multi-purpose tools. Things where just the knife comes like a butter knife, the awl isn't sharp, that's sort of those junky things, the saw isn't thinned at the top, all those rubbishy things. So then I went back to basics and got myself a Swiss Army knife. This is the Hiker model. So I got this model because I preferred you can get the camper, which has the corkscrew, the Hiker has the 3D Phillips. So I got this for myself, and this actually became, I carried this always at work, and this is what I carried in my pocket for about, well, probably the better part of a year. This or another Leatherman multi-tool that I'd started to collect as well. So that's sort of just my beginnings of a multi-tool, and that's got one of those tie amulet pocket clips on it there as well, your hands little things. And then I had torches at work. I've always got a torch at work, obviously, but I decided to get something to slip in my pocket. I got two torches. I got my beloved 4.7's Pre-On 1, featured in many, many of my videos before, I think probably January 2015. The clip was always terrible, and it came off, and I was devastated. I lost my Pre-On P1. But I also got this one as more of my sort of, I'd still carry it lots of times. This is a Phoenix LD20. This was the cream of the crop in about 2010. Really was, really thin, two AA battery torches. In Australia, you still can't go to many shops and get CR123s. So I wanted something AA, and it pumps out like 170 lumens, for a long time. It's got a reasonable interface. You wind it down, and you wind it to minimise the light, and you can really kind of wind the light all the way back a little bit to, from super dull to like put it in turbo mode. It's actually quite potent. Like it's still not terrible, still quite light. Still just have it around the place as a house torch. So that is where I had. That's where I sat for about probably until the start of. The middle of last year perhaps. this is kind of my middle ground gear. This is the first inklings of good cheap stuff that became the basis of the rest of my sort of collection. And I'm pretty happy with it. Even looking back, none of this stuff sucks. I'm not embarrassed like this, you know, I haven't had anything horrible like this or another horrible knife I had, which in hindsight is horrible, is the old British Army knife, which I have a video on, probably about, this is my 5th or 6th video. Absolutely ghastly knife, super stiff can opener. I just didn't know what I was looking for in knives. That was less when I was gear reviewing and more just gear showing, I think. So I had one of those, but as for horrible gear, it really did stop with these items here. So this is kind of where I'm keen on hearing from everyone else. I'd love to see response videos, but even just if you answer in the comment, I'd love to know when you kind of switched on and started actually doing your research, what sort of stuff you started buying and what you graduated from. So, you know what, I was a sheeple. I've liked Bear Grylls because I sort of liked I read his book, I liked the man. I like certain sides of the man. I liked his show a little bit back in the old days, you know, before I really started looking too hard at it. And you know what, it's still dumb entertainment, it's still fun. But yeah, so I got into knives through this Bear Grylls knife, I really did. You know, what can you say? If it wasn't for this, there wouldn't be these, and then again, there wouldn't be things like this. Like, it's something to be said for that. Like, people always bag these Bear Grylls knives, but they must have given the whole gear industry a massive kick in the ass. Like, this plus the whole general survival mentality, which you gotta say, Bear Grylls definitely pushed it along. He didn't invent it, of course, but you know, you can only bag it so much because it got me into this. I dare say it got probably another probably 20% of the people watching into this whole scene as well. Of course, some people will never admit it, some people deny it, some people will say the first knife they ever bought was a Survive Knives GS05, and you know, because they just had a, you know, they knew about it, or the first knife they ever bought was a Hellefisk, you know, amazing cork-handled Swedish bushcraft knife because, you know, Mors Kahansky was their grandpa. People will say all sorts of things, but my first knife that got me into it was a Bear Grylls knife. Not very good. Make some mistakes, learn from them, end up with some pretty reasonable middle range gear. So that's what I want to hear. What was your gear that you got? I'd love for you to show me in a video, ideally. What was the gear you got when you started actually giving a shit and actually starting to read your reviews, learning from some bad stuff, getting amongst it, and then eventually wherever you ended up. So what are your sort of pinnacle gear items? Like, you know, these aren't nothing compared to what some people have. You know, these aren't even some of the most expensive stuff. They're just what's known as probably some of the best stuff going at the moment. So, you know, the Olight S1 baton, that's quite a cheap light, but you'd be hard pressed to find a better one for this size for everyday carry lately. There's more expensive bushcraft knives than the LT Wright Genesis, but it's a damn good one. The Paramilitary 2, it's a staple. The Falcon U2, just sharp, simple, beautiful, the iPod of knives, you know. Dragonfly 2, super steel. Finally has a good edge on it, super sharp, just, you know, high value stuff. And the Swiss tool, of course, just pinnacle multi-tool stuff. So it's kind of how I got here. So that's this little discussion video done. That's what I really wanted to talk about today. Thanks so much for watching, and congrats to the commentary contest winners, sorry, from the video before. Sorry, it was a bit of a crappy video. I've just got my camera working. And what have we got next on the cards? I'm going to have another longer look at that Pendleton light. I've got a Cold Steel Voyager to do a video on, just probably the next thing I knock together. Cold Steel is here. It's officially in Australia for folding knives, which is very exciting. So I've started pretty entry level with the Voyager. It's a little bit of a different one though, you'll see that. Then what else have I got? I've got a cool little knife from SOG, a SOG Salute. You don't see many videos on that, so I picked one of them up to show you all about it. And yeah, a few things coming up. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching, my friends. Peace out.